Hi everyone, it's Shirley Farrar, and this is Encouragement on Fire. Thank you for returning again on Sunday at 8 p.m. I'm excited because this is number 84 podcast, and today we're going to talk about resilience. Now, I know in times past, we've talked about different things, and I think I have mentioned resilience before, but we're always talking about, and throughout this entire year, we're never going to stop talking about life-work balance because it is the most important thing for us to continue to defeat cancer, sickness, and disease. That is the whole purpose of why we get together. So, again, while we're doing that, there are some things that go into time management. There's some things that go into that life-work balance. And one of them is resilience. And as I start to talk about it, you're going to understand why I feel that it was necessary for us to have this conversation, okay? Previously, I've done workshops on resilience and how we can maneuver, how we move through whatever our situation is. And most of the time, it's about purpose. So, there's always keywords that I'm always going to talk to you about because it's who I am. And we can't escape who we are. So I'm always going to say purpose, life, work, balance. You're going to always hear those things from me. So today, let's talk about resilience. All right. So when I want to talk to you about resilience, I'm always going to go back to, of course, foundation, which is Bible, but I'm also going to go to theorists. Okay. There is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Daniel Goleman. And he talks about emotional intelligence. And I truly believe in order for us to be resilient in life, I don't care what it is, okay? Hopefully you are a person that's working towards your purpose. You have identified your purpose. But if you haven't, stay with us throughout this year. I'm pretty sure we're going to ignite you. We're going to encourage you to walk in purpose, okay? But today, as we talk about resilience, as we talk about emotional intelligence, I'm going to begin to talk to you about the 5, you could say stages, strategies, points, whatever you want to call them, of the emotional intelligence. So if you can wrap your head around these 5 points today, these 5 things, and you can challenge yourself every single year to grow from where you were last year in these 5 elements, these 5 things, you will find out that you are better for it. The people around you will even say that, as well as you'll feel different about yourself as you challenge yourself each year, every day, every month, okay? So let's get started. So the first one of emotional intelligence is empathy. Now, we assume that everyone is empathetic, but that's not always true. Especially in today's society, we're so quick. We want things right now. So if you go into a restaurant or someone's waiting on you, or you go into a supermarket, you want what you want right now. We're not even talking about a fast food restaurant, but wherever we go, everyone wants it right now. So we're not really empathetic on the other person who is providing the service. Someone got up just like you in the morning and they got themselves together and they said, I'm going to have a great day today. And now they have chosen, maybe based on their purpose in life, that they're going to serve you today. I find it a privilege to serve people. Okay? So whether you're a pastor, whether you're a minister, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a facility worker, whether you are a health practitioner, doctor, nurse, whoever you are, it is a privilege to serve other people, right? Because it's not about them, it's about us. It's about what we do and why we do it. Mine is based in, of course, my faith. And I believe that I'm here to do my purpose, and that is to serve in some capacity. I'm also called to lead, but we have different facets about who we are, right? But if we're talking about empathy, people take that time to serve you every day. And we're not always as empathetic to others in what they're going through. Remember, you're not the only one that lost a loved one. You're not the only one that your boss treated bad. You're not the only one that had a fight with your spouse. You're not the only one that sometimes you feel nobody loves me. You're not the only one in the world. There are other people who are going through other emotional roller coasters. And if we're mindful, if we're empathetic to each other, understanding that I'm not alone, I'm not a silo, there are other people around me, and taking the time to find out, are we all okay? I know one of my mentors, she always starts, and she knows who she is, she always starts every conversation, every meeting with, let's do a self-check. That's Dr. Moreau. She always does that. Let's do a self-check. Making sure that everyone in that space is okay. And if they're not, we're going to take some time to bring them to a place that at that moment they're okay, until we maybe can get them some other resources or have another conversation with them. But that's important. People are important. You are important. So let's focus on being empathetic to others. And if everyone is challenged to do that, what can we all accomplish if we all work together to do that for each other, right? And then the second one is effective communication. We talked about that in podcast number 83, that you have to be able to communicate with other people. And how do you communicate? You don't have to be a communication student or graduate in order to communicate well with other people. You have to make it up in your mind that I'm going to, in a loving way, because anything we do, we should always do it in love. In a loving way, I'm going to communicate in some fashion. Sometimes we communicate verbally. We're always communicating physically. So you're giving off gestures, your emotions. Even you're watching my face as I'm talking to you today. I'm giving off something also. So I'm communicating with you about how I feel, right? And so if we are mindful in that, it's not just the written word. We communicate in books and texts and other things, poetry, which are all wonderful ways to communicate how we feel about the topic or to another person. But we have to be effective communicators. And if you are not an effective communicator, then you should start to observe other people on how they communicate. Tomorrow, when you're in a conversation, watch how the person you're talking to communicates to you. You're going to get gestures. You're going to get verbal, right? There's different ways. So just begin to observe others around you and see if they're being effective. And hopefully they're being effective positively and not negatively, because that's another factor. Sometimes, even though I want to say something or I want to say what's on my mind, and I'm one of those people, I have to be careful with that. You have to say things in love. We always tell our kids, our children who are now adults, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. So I'm still learning that even to this day, because based on emotional intelligence, I still have to remind myself in certain situations, not every situation, but there are still some situations, even at my age, that I'm not quite there. And so we're always working towards that. I want to share a scripture with you because, like I told you, I'm always about foundation of the Word of God. But there is a scripture, and it's Galatians 6:9, and I'm going to read it. It says, "Let us not be weary in well-doing, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up." So I'm saying to you, remember, the whole point of this is being resilient, being able to show up. And if you can show up with your EQ or your emotional intelligence every time and be mature in that, if you don't give up, you will be successful. You'll have a successful end. But many times our emotional intelligence is not good. And so we always want to quit something. Something hurts, or you're in a situation that's very uncomfortable. I've been in a situation where I've been in a situation for years. And I remember being uncomfortable for a long period of time. And you know what? No one wants to be uncomfortable. Sometimes people go out of their way to make you feel uncomfortable in hopes that you'll just go away. And you have to know who you are. You have to have a very high emotional intelligence to understand that when other people throw tantrums or they act out, it's nothing personal. It's not you. It's them. And they need to increase their emotional intelligence. And I know people say, well, it's not personal, it's business or they need to increase their emotional intelligence, because in life, if we're not loving one another, if we're not integral, then what do we have? That's for another segment. I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, so number 3 of our EQ, our emotional intelligence, is self-awareness. This is the part where you begin to walk in purpose. This is the part where you start to find out who you are. If you're early on in your life, just coming out of high school, and you're trying to figure out, what is it I want to do? I've already talked to you. There's career self-assessments. There's mentors. There's different people for you to talk to, family members. You want to begin to understand what are your boundaries? What are the things that you like to do? Being aware of who you are, how you react in certain situations. It determines if your emotional intelligence is high or if it's not. Are you an individual that can go through trauma in the moment and still be okay and not be affected by it? Or going through the trauma, when you're coming out, you're like, you're not in a good place. So you begin to understand who you are. And so you need to understand, am I the type of person where I can deal with a lot of stress and I'm not going to get sick? Or, I can't be that person. My stress level has to be under a certain amount for my blood pressure to be down, for me to be healthy. Who are you in that? Self-awareness is really important. Then the 4th one is self-regulation. This is the one where when someone's pushing your buttons. We've all been in that situation where someone could say something and everybody else is like, all they said was such and such and such, but they said the right thing for you, and you went from 0 to 100. Not 0 to 10. You went from 0 to 100. So you being self-aware, you understood that my self-regulation, not too good in this situation. So what do you have to do? You have to start to learn yourself, being self-aware, and then knowing your self-regulation. What am I going to do? How am I going to react? And if you haven't been successful in the past, then you have to use some strategies that's going to help you, because some things you just cannot avoid. You just can't avoid. And so there is an article, and I'm going to go through them really quickly, but there's an article that really could help you. And this particular article is by Simply Psychology, and it talks about the strategies of self-regulating. Okay, so if you get an opportunity on the internet, look it up. There'll probably be a chart. But the first way in doing that is to, first of all, identify what you need to self-regulate. Identify it. If you can identify it immediately, that is the first thing. So if there's a situation that's really going badly, or there is situations that you've been in and it's very common and they keep repeating themselves, you're like, okay, I don't do well in these type of situations. You know who you are. We've all been there. So you need to identify it. The next thing is identify the trigger. What's going to trigger you in that moment? We sometimes laugh about people going off, or people fighting people, which is not funny. But people going in their personality from 0 to 10 or 0 to 100 as a hothead. Why are you doing that? Your self-regulation is off. And remember, we're talking about emotional intelligence, being resilient in the moment. How do we do that? So if you can identify the triggers, that's number 2. It's going to be helpful for you in the long term. And then what do you do? Even if you identify the triggers, what do you do, right? So number 3 is mindfulness. Sometimes you have to stop in the moment. And, some people say meditate. Others, like myself, faith-based, pray. Sometimes mindfulness, not doing anything, taking a deep breath, putting everything out of your mind and taking a moment. So even if we sat there right now, we just take a moment. Because what is in front of you, it too shall pass. And understanding that it too shall pass. You do not have to react off of that situation. And then number 4, talking about it. Sometimes you need people in your inner circle that, that sit at your table. We'll talk about that in the next section, or in the next podcast. But you need close people around you that you can talk about it, so that they can understand your fears, your excitement, all the things that you're feeling, your emotional, setbacks, all those things. That's just your emotions, that you need to talk to someone about it. And then I always say, and we talked about that in the last podcast, journal. If you need to understand about your self-regulating, journal about it. You'll begin to see some patterns of maybe some things you always you have to work on. It's other people, but this is really an internal thing. We don't always have to go off or get excited or get angry or get emotional simply because other people try to, that my old 6th grade teacher used to say, Shirley, don't let them get you goat. That's what she used to say to me. And I appreciate her teaching me that value lesson in the 6th grade, because she was right. Just because people say things, people shout things, doesn't mean I have to move, doesn't mean I have to be emotional. And I still can be emotional, but I don't have to react to you outside of myself. The next one is take a break. Sometimes you have to walk away. Excuse me, I need a moment. Excuse yourself from that situation, walk away. Take a 15-minute walk. I do that all the time. I take walks all the time. I take breaks. Sometimes it's just, you just need that, And listen, if you find yourself in a situation where you need breaks for your sanity, then talk to your doctor, because that's another one that I was going to talk about, which would have been number 8. I'll talk to you about number 7 in a moment. But talking to a counselor. Sometimes you have to talk to a counselor. And a counselor may be able to give you accommodations where while you're at work, you got to take a break. It's okay that you have to get up and take a walk. Sometimes even when you're taking a test, you become overwhelmed. It all depends on the person, and it all depends on your mental health. And sometimes you have to stretch in order for you to be okay. And that's all right. Okay? And going back to number 7, that is getting plenty of rest. One of the things I can tell you, when I am well rested, I'm less likely to react. When I am not rested, sometimes those triggers that I already know are triggers, it's one of those things that it's a trigger, but you don't care because I'm tired. But that's a bad place to be in. So I encourage you to get your sleep. So those are the 8 things that I would say to you, the strategies, and that came from Simply Psychology, on how to relegate or self-regulation, which is number 4 of emotional intelligence. Number 5 is motivation. Motivation. Why are you motivated, right? Why are you doing this? And I still say go back to your purpose. It's always important. Go back to your purpose. So I am Shirley Farrar, and this has been Encouragement on Fire. I'll talk to you soon on our next podcast.